Welcome to using United States Holocaust Memorial Museum resources to teach and remember the Holocaust. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you're familiar with the webinar tools that you have. Let's take a look at the GoToWebinar control panel. You'll see that you have some options, questions, and chat. If you click on the plus sign next to the word, you'll be able to open that field so you can type in the empty box. So go ahead now and open up chat or questions, and you'll be able to participate. We're definitely looking forward to responding live to your contributions and letting this be a participation-heavy webinar. It's my pleasure to be here in Washington, D.C. I'm with Jennifer Chardelli. Jennifer is a program manager at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's National Institute for Holocaust Education. I'm Wendy Amato. I'm the Director of Education for WorldStrides. Jen, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here together.
Oh, Wendy, I'm so glad you could make it to the museum, and thanks to WorldStrides for making this webinar a reality.
A pleasure. It's great. Can you start us off with a big picture overview? Let's get the big picture.
Great, I would love to. So the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, located in Washington, D.C., is our nation's memorial to remembering and teaching about the Holocaust. As a federal institution, we're charged with sharing resources throughout the U.S. and even the world that help people to remember and learn about the Holocaust and to better understand how an event like this can happen in a society. People question, one, how could an event of such massive scale happen?
Right.
How did something that started in Germany spread throughout other European countries and influence the world? And even in the United States, right, we're often curious about the role played by the U.S. in responding to events that it learned about. I know that many teachers, right, discuss those who were targeted by the Nazi regime, those who lost their lives, those who survived. They teach about those who rescued,
yes.
And those, right, who helped to try and make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so the museum works to remember the victims by teaching about the Holocaust and working to understand the ways in which this history matters for us today.
It's true. I'm excited to take time to talk about the educational resources that support those who are teaching their students about the Holocaust. We've got folks from all over the place attending this webinar, so teachers, if you'll take a moment now, I'd love to know where you're linking in from. Go ahead and type in the chat box or in the question box and tell me what state you're in. Let's see where we are. We all come from really different places. We also come to the webinar with really different experiences related to teaching about the Holocaust. Our goals for this webinar are to share some resources, to share some approaches to teaching, and to think about how we can frame the history of the Holocaust in meaningful ways for our students. So Jen, what does the museum do to support educators?
Well, Wendy, I think you also made a great point about everybody coming to this history with so many different experiences, and our resources work to address that. So we host conferences here, we reach out to teachers across the nation, and on our museum's website, we have a number of resources that folks can link to learn more about teaching. So
let's take a look.
Yeah, what do I teach, for example. If you look at this page, you'll see a whole list of specific topics with links to additional resources that help make teaching a little more manageable.
Let me add this also as a hot link into our chat field here so that teachers can click and go now or later.
Great. In addition to those topics, we also have guidelines for teaching about the Holocaust. And sometimes it's a complicated topic, and so keeping some tips in mind in terms of defining terms, using precise language, contextualizing the history, translating statistics into people, all of these are meant to be a real great support system for teachers in the classroom.
This guidance is helpful. It's reassuring also. So our focus today, in addition to hearing about all these amazing resources, we're going to focus today on the resource CD and DVD, right?
Yes. So this year, we've created a resource that's geared around a specific theme, confronting the Holocaust, American responses to the Holocaust. We know that due to annual commemorations that occur in April, this is a time when many teachers and educators think about the Holocaust in their classroom. And so this is a resource that teachers can use with their own class. And we've heard of teachers also creating commemorations or larger events for the larger school community. So we have made this available in
so many ways to use it.
There are lots of ways, and we'll just scratch the surface today. That you can see here, you can see the link where folks can order their own copy if they don't have one yet. And we can also see, once they get their own copy, again, the many, many resources. So there are historical overview PDFs, there are poster sets. All of it is geared towards providing accurate, engaging materials that folks can use.
It is impressive. So for our short time together in the webinar, let's take the opportunity for us to discuss rationales for teaching about the Holocaust. We certainly want to provide information and resources, and we also want to answer questions. We've got a lot to do.
Yes, we do. And I wanted to share, as we get started, a 4.5-minute video, which is featured on the DVD, and it's actually called Why We Remember. And so this features a variety of voices reflecting on the significance of the Holocaust and why we continue to remember and examine this event in our history today.
This is powerful. Great. So while you're bringing up the video, I just want to assure teachers that the incredible presentation quality versions of all of the videos and the resources in the kit. And also, as we're watching, teachers, if you will type in your chat or questions box, think about the points of relevance that you would want to point out to your students when you engage them in a consideration of the Holocaust, and what kinds of things strike you from watching this video.
Memory is what shapes us. Memory is what teaches us. We must understand that's where our redemption is. I think the important thing to understand about this cataclysmic event is that it happened in the heart of Europe. Germany was respected around the world for its leading scientists, its physicians, its theologians. It was a very civilized, advanced country. It was a young democracy, but it was a democracy. And yet it descended not only into social collapse, but world war and eventually mass murder. A strong man came to power in Germany whose ideas were that Germany has to create a national community which would include only the Aryan race, which he considered superior, and all the people who did not belong to the Aryan race could be eliminated. With planning and propaganda, he was able to convince most of the German people to go along with him. Insensitive to what happened to the Jews who had basically been their former neighbors. And he managed to build concentration camps and killing centers and finally gas chambers to annihilate 6 million Jews, and at the same time also millions of others murdered in a systematic government-sponsored way. And it's made up of so many people who participated in different ways, who made it possible.
People who follow orders without question. Bystanders who watch and do nothing. Ordinary men and women simply going with the flow.
The events and the results of the Holocaust were so devastating. It was an extreme that we can barely imagine.
So mind-boggling that the temptations to forget and to repress, to just put it out of mind, are very real.
But we remember. We remember because it is an unthinkable scar on humanity. We need to understand what human beings are capable of.
So this video provides some rationales for why we continue to remember and teach about this event, and I'd like to frame the consideration of resources today according to 3 guiding principles that help promote effective teaching about the Holocaust. We know that teaching is effective when educators convey accurate information about the Holocaust, when they personalize the history by highlighting individuals, and when they demonstrate how the Holocaust is relevant to today's world. And we'll go through and break each of these down, and we can share some resources that help support each of the points.
That's great. That's a nice focus when you do it. The museum's mission includes providing historically accurate materials to frame the study of the Holocaust. Educators are emboldened and strengthened when they know that they're using documented and factual information about the Holocaust. Sometimes securing accurate information can be tricky. I know even just a general web search can produce so many results. It's hard to sort through them and be assured that you're using things that are accurate and authentic. But it's really important for us to be sure we're not conveying misinformation.
Right, and both of us were in the classroom, and we know how much time is at a premium. And so, again, one of the missions of the museum is just to help put this information out there so it's really easy for teachers to have access to.
Seal of approval on it.
Right, yes, and that's just a go-to place where people can be, they know they're getting good stuff. And so, for example, the annual theme, we create themes that help to break down what is a large and complex history into interesting ways to think about it. So this year's theme remembers 2 key anniversaries, the 75th anniversary of the voyage of the St. Louis and the 70th anniversary of the deportation of Hungarian Jews. So we consider the significance of these events, one that deals with the refugee crisis and the other which sadly deals with the ultimate act of mass killing. And we do this by exploring what the United States knew about these events and how the United States responded.
That annual theme, Confronting the Holocaust, American Responses, is really an incredible opportunity to make connections to American history. This examination of the past provides a fresh lens for students to consider best actions today. The world's still complicated, and the reality is things are still challenging.
Yes, it is. And so when you think about this theme, this resource contains a number of different tools that can provide some context. So you can see here historical overview articles, you can see the PDFs and the poster sets, and I would love to tell you a little bit more about the poster sets.
Yes, please. Let's focus on the poster sets for a moment here.
Okay, so first off, there are 2 poster sets, and the first one deals with the Holocaust writ large. So you get a narration of this history in 21 panels, and all the posters you can see here have a visual that is a primary document and the context that supports that. And the students can use these as visual props, and teachers can have this in the classroom. Additionally, there's also a theme-specific poster set, and so the design here focuses on the events and highlights how the events in this context came to be and what the United States was thinking as it responded and learned more about the events happening in Europe.
These particular poster sets and the other images that are available on the resource kit inspired WorldStrides Education team to develop a special lesson plan that we make available with when we send out the resource kit. The lesson plan is providing the steps for leading a visual discovery for your students. So the standard steps for visual discovery are outlined, and then extension opportunities are provided for teachers and guidance in assessment. We really wanted to make sure that we would help teachers to use the abundance of visuals that are in this kit and use them well. So that's one of the lesson plans with WorldStrides prepared.
And it's a nice way. I mean, the posters help narrow down the endless supply of photographs. And right, even with this image that you see here, when you study that photo, you come to learn that one of the young people that we know of actually survived the Holocaust, and another one, sadly, on return to Europe, did not. She was sent to a camp. And so you can unpack these photographs and really learn so much more about the history. And additionally, just thinking about context, we have animated maps, and sometimes people don't always find geography captivating, but the maps help to give a visual, and we're just doing a screenshot here, but when you play the actual map, right, there's narration, and you can see the visual spread of how the Holocaust influenced so many countries in Europe. So that's another resource that's available for folks.
Between the poster sets and the maps, I would love to see a teacher develop a classroom or school project that would encourage students to create a display so that we can use visual education to help people learn about the Holocaust. A class could work together and even create an exhibit.
Well, right, and that can be something that goes out of the classroom and maybe it's in the library or in the cafeteria or something where their work has a greater audience and maybe more authentic learning because they've got
community.
Absolutely. So
we know no history is ever just about dates and events. So a visual would go even beyond that.
Yeah.
Presenting dates and events, but also helping us to identify that there are people involved. And so we remember that the Holocaust happened to real people, and we can think about how we can personalize with our students.
And personalizing the history, right, ties into another of the guidelines where we, when you talk again about 6 million, it's hard to conceptualize, but when we're reminded that every single individual that we're talking about was somebody's aunt, somebody's uncle, a sister, a cousin, genocide is a murder that happens to one person at a time. It happens again and again, and that's why, right, hearing testimony and reading personal stories is so compelling and so important. And those vivid recollections remind us, right, this history is about people, and they were people who had lives and dreams and jobs and families and were parts of community. We remember that humanity.
I think one of the great resources from the museum includes oral testimonies. They provide insight into how the events affected individuals. It really makes it personal for the students.
Well, and we tried to incorporate that into this year's resource as well. And so the theme, we have a theme video that talks about the events I mentioned, and again, the American response. And I'd love to play a short clip that features 2 Holocaust survivors, Steve Fenves and Augie Gavas, who talk about a very challenging event in the history, deportations of Hungarian Jews, and their firsthand experience gives us real insight of how that affected individuals.
And this is available on the kit.
Yes, it is.
Sure. There's a long line of railroad cars, and then order came to mount the cars. And I remember even at 13, I had to help people like my grandmother, people like my aunt, to get up on the high car. And eventually the doors were closed, the locks were put on, and I don't know how many hours wait, and then the trains took off.
And it's just for me to believe that this is possible to transport people like this. It was, of course, standing place somewhere, and there was a small window under the roof, and a bed in the corner. It was unbelievable. People became hysterical. They were screaming. Some people were yelling. Some people were fainting. Some people were crying. It was a situation that I never, ever could imagine to happen to human beings.
Those personal histories are great instructional.
Well, they do, right?
material.
They give just insight that make what is unfathomable somehow accessible.
And there's another, I think you have another first-hand testimony. There's a short film, a 39-minute film that focuses on the experiences of one woman.
Yes, Gerda Weissman-Klein, and she is remarkable. So that's something that can also be, shown often in a classroom
Also on
setting.
the DVD.
Absolutely. And additionally, there are a number of printed resources that tell the personal stories of a number of people whose lives were affected by these events, and those can be incorporated into the displays we were talking about earlier, or students can just again understand the personal as they examine this history.
I always appreciate how the museum uses resources to raise important questions for us, things that really matter today. While the events of the Holocaust happened in the past, we can see certain trends and challenges that persist in our world today. It's not an easy world.
No, and sadly, we often think the Holocaust was a massive event, but it was not the first mass atrocity. It was not the last mass atrocity, and we still face many of these challenges today. So our history, examining that inevitably raises these questions for our students.
Yeah. We can help them to see why it's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of the relevance, we have prepared another lesson plan. WorldStrides prepared another lesson plan that we distribute with the resource kit. This lesson plan is on media and public opinion. And teachers, for you, picture helping your students to examine headlines and to look critically at the way media has portrayed significant events in history. There was a lot of control over what the public knew. about events.
Well, right. I mean, some people, right, wonder, well, what did people in the United States know? And we see here a headline from 1941 from the New York Times talking about refugee policy and curbing refugee entrance into the United States. And it raises questions, right? When people in the American public see headlines, what are the choices? How do we respond? What are the challenges that it raises? And especially when we think about media today, even beyond newspaper headlines, right? But we're exposed to information, and what do we do with that information?
Media is powerful. We have to look critically. Do you have another video for us?
We do. And this video continues to explore, again, relevance for today. It's the final clip we'll play in this webinar, and we'll talk a little bit after about some of the points that it makes us think about. Thank you.
The time for a war refugee board would have been before the war, when you really had refugees who were still looking for visas and able in some fashion to get out. If you wait until, in the case of the Holocaust, Hitler begins to expand his Reich across Europe, it's already too late.
I think one of the lessons is that the individual has power. It's public pressure that leads to the rescue resolutions in Congress in the fall of 1943. It's a number of people writing, it's people showing up to protests, it's people saying, I know what's going on in Europe, I believe it, and I want this government to try to stop it.
People want to know, have we learned from history? Have we learned specifically from the history of the Holocaust? And my answer is yes, but we learned very, very slowly.
Terrible things continue to happen. Governments continue to fail to respond sufficiently or soon enough to help victims of genocide around the world. And it's a tough call. There's no easy answer. There are challenges to intervening in a foreign country. There are certainly challenges when you implement a refugee policy that lets a lot of people in at once. And yet we really do need to think about this. When you have millions of people that are left homeless, who are murdered, whose lives are destroyed, those ruins have a ripple effect for every nation on this planet. It carries such a heavy cost that we have a responsibility to figure this one out.
So as we were saying, right, inevitably thinking about this history reminds us that challenges persist today, that they didn't end with the Holocaust, and all of these points of relevance enhance classroom considerations as we think about the importance of teaching about the Holocaust today.
It is important. I sure hope that people are excited to take time to explore the materials in more detail. The resources are really rich. So at this time, teachers, I'd love to hear what questions you have, what connections you've been making between the resources and your work with students, or other comments. Type in the question or the chat field. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, and we'll be in touch. So while you're giving us that information, we also want to remind you that there are additional resources for educators on the museum website, and we'll post this link in the chat box so that you can link right to it. And then also just a reminder that you can order from WorldStrides, like they put together the resource with the WorldStrides lesson plans. You can order a kit.
Request that. We'll send the resources and the lesson plans together to you. It's terrific. So Jen, we accomplished our goals for the webinar, shared some information, answered questions, explored the resources, and I just want to make sure that I offer a thank you to you for letting me join you here and for sharing information.
Well, thank you again to WorldStrides and just you, Wendy, for engaging in this conversation, and we hope that folks out there really are enriched and make good use of this with their students and just have real meaningful experiences with them.
Exactly. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Goodbye.
Bye.